Most members of the media would have witnessed the last debate in Parliament in the final session before the National Assembly went into recess. And you would have witnessed what has come to be typical of this government. Arrogance and lack of transparency, particularly as it relates to the discussions surrounding the financial papers that were before the House. You would have seen over and over again members of the opposition raising questions on provisions in those papers, and you would have seen members of the government through all sorts of ruses try to avoid giving straight answers to the National Assembly and to the people of this country. It happened on issues surrounding the Durban Park project. We're yet, even with the government seeking over $400 million in supplementary provisions to complete that Durban Park project, we're still not sure that those are the final payments. We are not sure about the finances surrounding that project. First of all, there have been no answers given about the large sums of money that have been collected from the private sector and spent on that project. We do not know how much money was collected from the private sector, who gave the money, and how it was spent. We heard, first of all, that this project will be done at no cost to the Treasury. Then we heard it will be $150 million. This turned out to be over $400 million now of provisions. And we are hearing that there are still outstanding bills close to another $500 million on this project. So the government, again, sought to hide the reality surrounding this project. We have heard about a new approach of the government, that out of fear of losing appeals, the government now, if it has a financial dispute with a private citizen in this country, will settle the matter because it is fearful that it may lose appeals that are pending. So we heard the DDL matter being used in Parliament to excuse the settlement of the issue surrounding Hague-Bush. So I want to say to Guyanese today, if you do not want to pay taxes, then all you have to do is when you receive an assessment from the GRA, you should then go to the court and say the assessment is wrong. And after it being in court for a year or two, this government will settle it at less than 10% of the face value, because that is what we're being told is the principle governing settlements of tax liabilities now. Not the law, but the fear of losing appeals. And I come back to the DDL matter. It was the DDL, that took the government to court several times to avoid paying taxes, dragging the matter out. And that the GRA made an assessment based on a court-ordered formula, and this government settled the case for a mere $1.5 billion that will cause liabilities to the Treasury upwards of $60 billion. Where yet Granger loves to do commissions of inquiry. Every day we hear another one. I've asked for an assessment of this. Why not order a commission of inquiry on this matter? Why not tell us who settled the matter? Was it the Commissioner General? Was it the board? Did the cabinet have an involvement in the settlement of this matter? No answers. Yet we're told in Parliament there was a fear of losing the appeal. That's why they did it. The same thing happened with Hague-Bosch. But what topped the icing on the cake was when we got to the whole issue of the rental of storage space for the storage of pharmaceuticals. The minister made several statements, and you saw the fiasco in Parliament. First of all, when asked who are the principals of this company, he said he did not know. He asked about the address of the company, Linden Holding Company. He did not know. Asked where the bond is located. He did not know. Asked whether the contract was signed or not. He did not know. Asked whether he could, he will lay a copy of the contract in Parliament. He said, I will have to get the landlord's permission. This is from a government that tells us that contracts should be routinely laid in Parliament. You have to get the landlord's permission. Then when pressed about the rate, well, after being questioned by several members of Parliament, we found out that we were going to pay $12.5 million per month, and we have made the initial advances already. $12.5 million a month to rent storage facility of, at that time we didn't know, about 10,000 square feet. And he, through no public tendering process. So in trying to excuse it, which is typical of this government, now you hear, oh, you all did the same thing. That's the standard thing. You all did the same thing. So we were told in Parliament that the PPP paid $19 million to new GPs per month, to new GPC, to rent the facility. That was the first blatant lie that the minister told the people of this country and the National Assembly. And when Parliament comes out of recess, we will go to the National Assembly with a motion to send him to the Committee of Privileges for lying to the Parliament. The PPP never rented any storage space, rented or paid any rental for any storage space from new GPC. If the government says otherwise, it could easily show you the contract. If there was a contract, I'm sure it would love to show you a contract where we would have paid this sum. They've been in office over a year now, so they would know whether we have been paying. There was one no agreement, rental agreement, and we have never paid not a cent, much less $19 million for storage. But the reality of it, how they came up with the 19 apparently, is that they sought a quotation from New GPC. New GPC submitted a quotation for 70,000 square feet for $16.6 million for 70,000 square feet of a certified bond, FDA certified bond, for 16.3 million. They added VAT, so it got to 19. And they disregarded that and then went to this company, Linden Holding, and rented a 10,000 square feet bond at $12.5 million. This works out to over $1,250 per square foot for the one that they're renting now, versus $237 for the GPC proposal. That was 5 times less than the one they rented for certified bond. Secondly, so that was the first lie that the minister told to the parliament. He said they were paying $19 million to rent, that the PPP was paying this. The PPP never paid a cent to rent any facility from GPC, and we never had an agreement to that effect. The second lie he said, he told the nation, is that when questioned about what is being stored there, he said pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. There's nothing being stored in the bond. It's under construction now. It is under construction. Now, what I gather is that they paid 2 months security deposit and a month rental, $30-something million. This property was acquired by an individual a couple of months using our deposits, the state's deposit, the people's money, to buy the property for $25 million. And now they're using the other 12 or 13 million to fix it up. So the government is financing the acquisition of the property as well as the fixing up of the property by its advance that it gave. This is, so they're not storing anything in it. It's under construction now and being financed by the government's deposit. This is something that will go before the Committee of Privileges. When I asked some of the MPs, including Nagamutu, he said this matter was fully discussed at the cabinet. So it is not George Norton alone that we have to go after. It is the cabinet. The cabinet. They said this matter was fully debated at the cabinet. It's Granger's government that has been involved in what could mildly be put as a blatantly corrupt deal. Blatantly corrupt deal to transfer $12 million a month to an individual that is very close to the government. But we have seen a similar pattern. We have seen it with the secret negotiations for power purchase with another financier. We have seen it with a fertilizer contract from another financier who is from abroad. This is the order of the day with this government. It's a totally corrupt transaction. Totally corrupt. And I want to see whether Granger will now order a commission of inquiry into this matter, since he loves, as I said before, his commissions of inquiry. Will he order one into this matter too? So this is typical of the new government. The arrogance in not answering questions, you would see in it. It's our time now. It's as though it's their money. It's our time now. We don't have to answer these questions. You saw how Norton joked around when asked about the location. he started and his colleagues found this amusing. When we were trying to find out where the bond is located, he said, oh, you go down onto the East Bank Road and you turn left and you look to your right and all sorts of things. And his colleagues found a matter like this that involved millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. Very amusing. They're all part of this. So, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. The next issue that I want to return to, I would like the release, and Harman has been engaged in a series of lies. He has said that he does not have the records to release documents because somehow the PPP didn't leave these documents. Even the ones they're signing now, they don't want to release, after saying all contracts, Granger saying all contracts should be released. Evaluation reports do not have confidentiality clauses. I am asking once again for them to release the evaluation report for the hospital, the specialty hospital. I'm asking that they release the evaluation report done under the PPP for the road to Amila Fall. I'm asking that they release the evaluation report for the Marriott Hotel. I'm asking that they release the evaluation report for the pre-qualification for the purchase of drugs where New GPC won many of those contracts, that to release the evaluation report for that. Harman said that they did not have the documents on Amila's Fall. And I suspect they're saying that because the Norwegians are doing a review of the project. So after he said that, I was surprised because I know it's not true. But I just wanted to confirm, so I called Mr. Brassington. And he said to me that several times we have released documents, but we had a meeting of the current cabinet subcommittee. This was about 2 months after they took office, with about 6 ministers there. And they asked for several documents, and we put these documents on a flash drive and sent it to all the ministers. Now, I can give you, the members of the media, a list of all the things that are on the flash drive. And if the government can't find it, I'm sure we can find it, and if they give permission and release all the following documents to the media, because they're hiding behind not finding things. So here were the things that were in the flash drive. One, Amila Falls Handover Report, May 2015. MOU China Rail Group Limited, April 2015. Term sheet, acquisition of AFHI assets, January 2015. Mandate letter, January 2015. PM letter of commitment, January 2015. Draft share and asset purchase agreement, May 2015. Norway letter agreement, GRIF funds, January 2015. IDB documents, there are several of them, including independent engineers' scope of work. Guarantee, power purchase agreement guarantee, June 2013. Notice of motion, 10th Parliament, August 2013. Financial term sheet, May 2013. Presentations, public presentation, IDB presentation. Then the financial model, December 2014. Contract agreements. EPC contract, September 2012. Implementation agreement, April 2011. Assignment of receivables agreement, April 2011. Power purchase agreement, April 2011. Investment agreement, May 2012. Hydrology reports. Montgomery Watson Harzer feasibility study report, review of December 2001, review of hydrology study, September 2008, Halcro hydrology review, June 2011. Permits and licenses. Finalize EPA permit renewal, EPA permit for construction and operation of a miler, EPA permission for construction of a Mile Falls access road and transmission line clearance, etc. Corporate documents, MOU among Site Global, eVenture Partners and Synergy Holding, Articles of Incorporation, Certificate of Good Standing, Certificate of Formation, etc. IDB due diligence, economic, AFHA, Economic Analysis and Development Impact Assessment, PPA Energy, July 2014. ESG. I can go on. All of those things were on a flash drive given to members of the Cabinet Subcommittee around a mile fall. They have every single document. This government, because it argued that a lot of these contracts were corrupt, it has now a great difficulty in releasing the agreements. Here, we're the ones who are supposed to be, to want these agreements not see the light of day, and we are calling for them to be released to the public. And this government now is making excuses all along. So Harman needs to just sit down and sort this out before they go in an unprepared way to the press conference and keep making excuses all the time. They can find every single one of those agreements and many others, including the biennial agreement that they talk, and release them to the public. So, but my fear is that many of these things will not happen. We saw also in the Parliament, and this is something that bothered me tremendously, we saw a government that went to the Parliament and sought to excuse through a whole range of issues, extraneous issues, itself and the party that it belongs to, from the killing, the murder of Walter Rodney. And in my lifetime, I've never seen such serious acts of cowardice, immorality, unethical behavior, political opportunism as displayed by some of the speakers, particularly the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's sole purpose in this government is to criticize the People's Progressive Party, to sing for his supper. He has absolutely no power. He sings for his supper, and the only instruction that he takes is how loud he should sing. And then the president gives him the topic, and he says, how loud should I sing? And how long must I sing for? Nothing else. Imagine this recently matriculated lawyer whose only serious cases, his most serious case in the court was about the recovery of a stolen bicycle bell. was they sought to disparage three of the most eminently qualified persons who've been recognized globally for their contribution to jurisprudence and law. Their Queen's Counsel, the three commissioners. He sought to disparage these people. A man who just recently, as I said, matriculated in the law. And not just disparage them, but ascribe to them motives that might be even illegal. I think he owes an apology to the commissioners, the internationally recognized commissioners who sat on the Walter Rodney Commission. That's the first thing. But in his sweet, opportunistic song that he sang for the government benches and for Vincentian Road, he created a whole new scenario about what could have happened in Walter Rodney's death. And in that, he sought to blame the Americans for killing maybe Walter Rodney too. He said Walter Rodney was a victim, could have been a victim of the Cold War. When it was quite clear about who killed Walter Rodney and who were the political authors of the killing. Quite clear. We all knew that in Guyana, and it has been confirmed in the International Commission of Inquiry. But this, in an attempt to divert attention away from the People's National Congress, to which he serves faithfully now, he speculated about who may have killed Rodney and ended up as the Americans being one of the culprits for this. I wonder what the former charge in Guyana would think about that now. Yes, and as Siraj was saying, he almost bordered on saying that Walter Rodney committed suicide in his attempt to justify his $45 million renovated house and the $20 million of new furniture that he has procured for that property, and the $22 million Prado that he drives, and the $8 million that we spend on him monthly, and his $1.7 million salary, and his lack of any work in the government. He has no work to do. That's all he does. I've never seen such serious opportunism in my life, particularly from someone who used to shout at the top of his voice that it was the PNC that killed Walter Rodney. I can understand Harman and the others. They've been consistent. I can understand many of the other people on the government side who have been PNC members. They've been consistent in trying to hide that fact that they killed Walter Rodney. But Nagamutu it was a revelation. It shouldn't be surprising, but it was a revelation to me. The records are clear, and now, no matter the amount of excuses that they make, that this prominent son of Guyana, internationally renowned, was killed by the PNC. It was clear as day then, and the commissioners have just confirmed it. Now, maybe I should just focus on one other thing before I take questions, because I'm down on the weather today. I noticed that when I was abroad, there was a big furor here about some comments that I made. And I was, frankly speaking, a bit surprised, because I considered the comments very benign, very mild compared to what I've said in Guyana. The first thing is that I said is that this government discriminates against Indo-Guyanese. It's true, and I repeat it today again. It discriminates against Indo-Guyanese. Secondly, I said that they discriminate against supporters of the PPP. I've said that before. I've spoken about if you're black and you're PPP, then you face the brunt of the assault of the government. The Amerindians know that too, because the first act, the largest act of discrimination against indigenous people in the past maybe 50 years in this hemisphere has been perpetrated by this government when a week after they got into office, they terminated nearly 2,000 Amerindians, claiming that they were doing work, political work. So it is political discrimination because they applied a litmus test, the political litmus test, which we never did. So I don't know why it created all of these issues. And I said, we'll work hard and we'll take back this country. We'll take back this country from people who discriminate based on your politics or your race. And so today, I want to repeat all that I said abroad, and I want to unequivocally stand by every statement I've made so far. And I want once again to urge you to go back to the Babujan speech, because it seems as though it's a campaign of this government to characterize me in a particular fashion, helped obviously by some of the friendly media, friendly to them media. And the Babujan speech, in several parts of that speech, I spoke about a country for all of our people and the PPP practicing that. And I said there, when I said about them saying, throw these Koli people out, I said, had that happened in the PPP, had anyone used that sort of language in the People's Progressive Party, we will kick them out. Kick them out using that sort of racist language. It was a condemnation of the racism. And so when Christopher Ram filed his case, he left out that one sentence that followed the part that I spoke about, the earlier part, the one sentence. And many in the media have been guilty of doing that. So again, how many people have not spoken about the discrimination against Indo-Guyanese? Several months now. And I can come back. I spoke once just here with the same members of the media, and you asked me, do you have any evidence of this? And I pointed out one instance to you, right here, many of the same faces. And I said, look at the New York office, the consulate there. The president had made a statement that political people may not retain their jobs, which is understandable. If you're a political appointee, then there could be changes. But career officers had nothing to worry about. He said that right at the beginning when he took office. That in the New York office, 5 of the Indo-Guyanese who were removed, including M.R. Khan, who was the career political officer, and Evans, who was the politician appointed. He's spoken on PBP platforms several times. He was appointed by us politically to head the office. He was kept on. I pointed that out to you when you asked me, is there evidence? And I said, I can find lots of other instances. So I did not attempt, I didn't go to New York to say that. I said it right here at a press conference, right here. And I sought to, and I justified it. It is, what I said there is mad, but it seems as though that if you're Indo-Guyanese and you speak about discrimination against Indo-Guyanese or Indian people in Guyana, then you have to be racist. But if you're Afro-Guyanese and you speak about discrimination against Afro-Guyanese, historically or current, then you're a freedom fighter. That seems to be the feeling, and especially among the media. Because if you were to judge several individuals by the same standards that you want to judge me, every time I speak out against an act of discrimination against people based on their race or their politics, then you will find that this government is made up of a bunch of racists, because at several times in their history, they have spoken about discrimination against Afro-Guyanese. And if that's the standard, then they're made up, this government is made up of a bunch of racists. We had people on the fringes who are now part of the government. Clive Thomas has done this. He's hired by the government. Trotman has done this. Not the parliament. What's the Desmond Trotman. He is now earning a salary from the government. Ogunseyi has done this. He is now part of the government. Eric Phillips has done this. He's part of the government. David Hines has done this. He is part of the government. A few months ago, Carl Grenade said that in national awards, we discriminated against, that because of this racist government, we discriminated against Afro-Guyanese. And I had to point out to him in Parliament that for many years, I did not give national awards to anyone, not Indo-Guyanese, not Afro-Guyanese, not Amerindian, not anyone. The last set of awards that I gave, if you look at the people from finance, there are 5 of them that I chose from finance. Khurshid Sattar, Clyde Roopchand, Donna Yearwood, the governor of the central bank, Lawrence Williams, and Lennox Benjamin. 3 of them were Afro-Guyanese. All 5 of them started working before the PPP took office with the government. And he knew that because he came out of the finance stream. I had to point that out, how erroneous he was. But if saying that makes you racist, then he is 10 times more racist than I am. And all of these others. And the president has to be racist too, for saying some of the things he did. That he has done in the past, and he continues to say. So I will not stop representing people. If I feel they're being discriminated against because of their race, I will speak out against it, whether they're Indo-Guyanese or Afro-Guyanese. But not because they're Indo-Guyanese, I will suddenly cower in a corner and not say anything for fear of being labeled racist. And if I feel they're being discriminated because of their politics or any other matter, gender, anything else, then I will speak out against it. I think I earned that right. I saw David Hines saying, Jagdeo is wrong because this government can be discriminating against Indo-Guyanese. So, because look how much money they spent on sugar. This is his excuse. Look how much money they put into Gaisuco recently. Well, if that's the case, how can we be racist? And what he was accusing us all along, because if you look at Linden, that is 98% Afro-Guyanese. We built a new hospital. We built 2 new secondary schools. We built a Miller's Ward on Block 22, spanking new housing schemes. We're putting a new water supply system. Linden gets subsidized electricity. How could we be racist then too? What he was saying all along. But on one hand, this government can be racist because it puts in $8 billion of subsidy into Gaisuco. And so Jagdeo must be wrong. But look at the approach. Bath settlement, 30 lights there, put up by the community. The lights are taken down, and Patterson says, we can't afford 30 lights. But at the same time, the government spends $100 million in putting up lights in another part of the country, in Linden. And in Sophia. So, is that racism? Is that racism? You answer me. What do you think the people in Bath settlement feel? What do you think they feel? How do you think they feel? How are they going to process that? And so, I have absolutely no worry. My track record is clear. Let me tell, and we're going to explore this greater details. In the period after independence, to the time the PPP took office, Afro-Guyanese were predominantly in the public sector. And by the time the PPP took office, the public sector was pauperized. Because of the devaluation, the salary, the minimum wage fell to $25 a month, US dollars a month. Nurses, teachers, doctors, etc. They used to have to trade to make a living. The public sector faced the brunt of it, where Afro-Guyanese were mainly represented. And in the business community, in terms of business ownership, in the tenure of the PPP, at no time in our history, any time in our history, have there been so many black-owned businesses in this country, from every type of services, from security services, computer services, hairdressing, taxi services, so contracting, a whole range of things. I'm prepared to put our record on the line comparatively with the 30 years, the 23 years prior to that. Our record will speak for itself. And at no time have our villages made this sort of progress. The same, the early years of the AFC. They used to go to Berbice and say, look at this PPP government. They're doing everything for people in Linden, implying Afro-Guyanese. And they're not doing anything for you. That is how Nagamutu and Ramjatan mobilized in the beginning. And then they will go to Linden, another group, Trotman and the others, and say to the people in Linden, they're doing everything for the people in Berbice, implying Indo-Guyanese. That's how the AFC started. And so our record, at some point in time, we will have to examine it carefully. And Eric Phillips, I saw saying, they have almost a theoretical, a philosophical kind of underpinning to this new form of what they're calling it black consciousness, pushing the government. So his thing is that Afro-Guyanese only own 3% of the assets of Guyana. Ask him how he's come up with that. there's no clear way. Because how do you measure? So they talk about land. If a person has a house in South Georgetown, or you have 15 acres of land on the Essequibo Coast, if you monetize those, if you sell those, the person who has the house in Georgetown will probably get more in terms of value for the 15 than the person who sells the 15 acres of land that he has to live on in Essequibo Coast. How do you assess values? A lot of these things, because we have chosen to stay quiet about it, it doesn't mean that we don't have a track record of progress at every single level in this country. In terms of rights of people and race relations and asset ownership and business ownership, Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and all Guyanese have made tremendous progress under the PPP. And I am proud of that record. And I'm prepared to put my record on the line, not the gaffe of some of these fringe elements, but real hardcore fact-based assessments. And then you will see the progress. But that's all they have to play now, is the race game. So when Jagdeo speaks about this, it's racism. And every single day you see a barrage of racism or worse comments being spewed out by employees of the government, people who are paid from the Treasury, and they are the freedom fighters and the rights movement. That's all I'm going to say, because we will get back to this issue. I'm glad that the conversation is coming up, actually, because we need to do it more, debate it more, and expose a lot of these things. So we'll get back to it sometime in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition spoke about a number of issues. Among those are, of course, the Ministry of Health warehouse rental, the issue of DDL, Durban Park, the Rodney COI, the remarks he made in New York, which is being spoken about, his Babujan speech. Of course, this matter also was mentioned by the Leader of the Opposition. So I would appreciate that if in the initial stage of your questioning, we confine ourselves to the remarks, to the areas that he would have covered. It's not that the Leader of the Opposition will not entertain questions, I suppose, in other areas, but for the initial stage of the questioning, let us constrain ourselves to those areas and subjects that he covered. And yes, please.
Yeah. Well, you said a government of a specific race, yeah? So that is precisely what I'll get to in a moment. But let me deal with this issue about the allegations of corruption. So we've heard for several years that the PPP is corrupt and its members are corrupt. That was one of the key planks of the government when it was in opposition. Continues to say the same thing. Now that they're in government, they have a chance to prove all of this. So they have commissioned all of these forensic audits to find the corruption. And so we've been arguing, publish the forensic audits, publish the response of people, and take criminal action where you find the corruption. Okay? So far, this massive corruption that we've been hearing about from these forensic audits, we don't seem to be supported. They don't seem to be able to support this by reality. Even the president has acknowledged that. That's one. Secondly, one would think that the government would jump at an opportunity to expose all the substantial holdings of PPP members of parliament, ex-presidents, etc. In parliament, it was this government that voted against releasing to the public our tax record for the past 10 years and against the Integrity Commission submissions for the past 10 years. The PPP proposed that motion, so you would have seen all these substantial assets. They refused it. Seems as though they have more to hide because many of them have violated the law by not submitting. The third thing is we've heard about substantial assets stashed abroad. I've been urging the government, they don't need to wait on SARU to hire a company. There are companies that abound around the world whose job are to find hidden assets. To hire a company and say, here are 65 members of parliament as well as ex-presidents. Can you discover if they have any shares, bank accounts, properties, all of these things overseas? They can do that easily. They're now moving forward with it. It's easy. They don't have to wait on SARU legislation. So this government is finding it. Here is it. They claim that the airport was corrupt. But we didn't have a forensic audit for the airport. They went ahead with it. We heard that the specialty hospital was corrupt. But they wanted to use even the PPP's evaluation, which was not even the right evaluation, to give it to the Friends of Ramjatan. And it was only stopped because of the World Bank finding the company corrupt. We heard the Marriott Hotel would have been turned into a hospital because it's a corrupt deal. I don't hear anything much more about the Marriott. We heard about NISIL stashing billions of dollars. They've completed the audit of NISIL. Where are these billions of dollars? We heard about these private accounts that they were had, and that the day after they get into office, they will transfer all the funds to the Treasury. Those accounts still exist outside of the Treasury. So where is this massive corruption? You can prove it. In fact, I'm begging them to release evaluation reports now. We heard the same thing about the road to Myla Fall, that was a corrupt deal. Now, then the evaluation report will show how they came to FIP Motila versus the other people. If the public will then see that. So why can't they release it? They're having a very difficult time proving the corruption that they argued about. So we do have the moral authority and the right to expose all the corrupt deals of this government. And they're in such a short space of time. I know that they seem to want to set a record. This is Olympic time. And this government is like setting like some serious records on corrupt activities that will all be there. And running into billions of dollars. You know, the settlements so far have been close to $80 billion. I'm trying to think back about any settlement that we made that exceeded $1 billion. I can't remember. If we were so corrupt, we would have settled with Rudisa, or with BK, or with Dipcon, or DDL. If we were so corrupt, we fought in court to protect the government's interests and the people's interests. and the revenue base. We fought in court.
We offer our help to this government too.
And we offered. So that's the first issue. So my point is that do I, as Jagdeo, have to be the only person to watch what I say? When this government, you had, the president attended the forum recently, last weekend, and it's about for the UN decade, decade of people of African descent. And at that forum, it was supposed to be a forum for Afro-Guyanese celebrating, doing activities. Not if you're PPP or PNC or whichever other party. Afro-Guyanese of all political persuasions must feel comfortable at that forum. And two of the presenters, Hines and Lincoln Lewis, said, we voted for the government. We voted for this government. We must hold them to standards. They're addressing a black forum. You know what they're thinking automatically? Because you're black, then it must have been that you voted for APNU. What is more racist than that? That assumption. So how is that different than when I said in New York, I didn't say you voted for PPP. I said this is a fact that they discriminate against people of Indian origin. They discriminate against supporters of PPP. I've said this to predominantly Indian crowds on the Essequibo Coast in the campaign too. I said it here. And these are people who live here and vote here. And I've said it to them because I can substantiate it. And I said also, the reason they will not last long, the reason we lasted 23 years is because we were even-handed. And no government can be as partisan as this government and last in the long term. And so doesn't the president have to be responsible too? And all of these individuals, when one individual who now receives a salary from the government trying to prove that Afro-Guyanese came here before many Amerindians, and therefore they're entitled to communal lands because the Amerindians have gotten too much, 14% of the country already. Isn't that bordering institutionalized racism? Why aren't we assessing these people the same way that you would assess someone from the PPP who are making these statements all the time? Yes, this end.
This gentleman then. Yeah. Yes, you. No.
Can you get some
you was
coffee?
first on. Coffee.
Sir, if I can bring you back to the bond quickly. The Minister Norton said it was sole source. Could you say if there were any breaches of the procurement laws for sole sourcing and making the advance, $25 million advance? That's first. You mentioned the party coming out of recess would be moving a motion for him to submit the executive privilege.
Yes.
Should this fail, what alternatives are available to the party? And you mentioned also going after the entire cabinet because it was a cabinet decision.
That is what I was told, that by Nagamutu and others, that they debated this matter. So if they debated it, you can't just blame Norton for it. If they fully debated this matter, it meant they consciously decided.
It's in the financial paper.
Yes, and once it's on the financial paper, they knew that this was happening. So the first issue is the sole sourcing. They said it was an emergency, that they needed to get their drugs in to move it in swiftly. But as you know now, it's not an emergency. They're still fixing up the bond.
2 months. After.
Right, two months after. Secondly, as has been pointed out by several people, they breached the financial regulations. They breach of financial regulations. You're not supposed to use that provision use the contingency fund. You're supposed to use the consolidated fund for this sort of expenditure. Thirdly, if you single source, you have to secure the permission of the tender board, the central tender board. You have to get an approval for single sourcing. I want to know if they went through that process, but we don't know because this government just does not tell you. So did they get the permission of the central tender board to go ahead with sole sourcing? But clearly, this is a matter that, based on the body language and everything, it was a corrupt act that they intended to cover up. It was as clear as day.
So, sorry, just hold a second. We have the gentleman. And there's an issue.
On the same issue, if it's on the same issue,
Sole sourcing is a lingering issue. Why should the citizens look another way when your government has been accused of sole sourcing drugs from New GPC,
But-
and when this government is sole sourcing this facility? And you made a point about the bond, the government not paying for New GPC's bond. I know antiretrovirals were being stored in the bond at some point in time. So then who was paying for that?
the first issue is that obviously you didn't listen to me. We've been hearing about this sole sourcing issue. Sole sourcing is different than pre-qualification. And I am trying a million times to get Anand Gulsaran and a few members of the media to understand the difference between the two. That in pre-qualification, we bought drugs from pre-qualified companies. GPC was pre-qualified. That is different than sole sourcing. Now, how do you go about pre-qualification, pre-qualifying companies? You first of all get the standards. So the standards were established by the WHO, PAHO, etc. These are standards. You then go out to tender for companies who wish to supply drugs and can meet these standards. So their financial standards, their facility standards. So the facilities have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things in them. And there are a whole series of other standards. People then submit their bids, their pre-qualification requests. You have an evaluation committee established to assess the proposals. That is what I'm calling for Harman and the others to release about the pre-qualification bid for new GPC. So when no, that's precisely. So I'm coming there. So when you get pre-qualified, it means then you have registered drugs, the drugs are registered, you have the facilities, etc., for storage, etc. That's when, so if you get pre-qualified for 10 drugs or 15 drugs, then you have to still put in a bid sometimes, or you can then source it from that company, but they would have gone through a pre-qualification. So the pre-qualification takes every 3 years. That is what the Auditor General wrote about. He said, we should do the pre-qualification more often. That is with the new GPC, that it should be done more often, the pre-qualification. Now, this government can do that. They can pre-qualify every year. So you have companies that are assessed. They have not pre-qualified, so they're going now to the open market. So if you walk in now with 2 suitcases of drugs, and you go to somebody's office and you say, I have aspirin, but I can sell it to you for $10 versus $12. They buy it from you. but not checking whether it's registered, how it's stored, shelf life, all of these things. There's no comparison anymore because they're buying single sourcing from individuals who are not pre-qualified. So everyone could have pre-qualified. This guy could have pre-qualified. Lloyd Singh can pre-qualify anybody. That's the difference. And it is so often we hear it about the single sourcing. Single sourcing, if you check our Procurement Act, it speaks about several things, pre-qualification. When we did the road contracts, you often pre-qualify the contractors. So if you pre-qualify and only 3 contractors are on the pre-qualified list, then it's just a matter of price. It is the difference between pre-qualification and single sourcing. Here, this government has single source. So what it has done, $135 million of drugs it bought from a company that was in Parika, from, a bottom house operation, that never supplied drugs before, never pre-qualified, doesn't even have certificates for the registered drugs. In that process, you can have all kinds of drugs coming into the system.
So
The
bank
government,
never paid for the bond. The government never
no, we never, not a single cent. And that's why I'm saying to them that it's misleading. When you say, because I saw one newspaper compared 19 million per month versus 12.5 million. It is 0 versus 12.5. And in any case, the 19 million, that's how I explained that they came up with the 19 million. That you recall how I came up, that they asked for proposals and that the 19 million was inclusive of VAT for a 70,000 square feet facility versus a 10,000 square feet facility, excluding VAT, for 12.5 million.
When we're going to get a list of individuals who are being discriminated against, let's say this on the floor. Because we've heard the General Secretary talk about it. You again today, you give one example.
I gave an example.
That's one example.
Right. And no, how many examples before you're satisfied? How many do you need? Yeah, but how many examples? You tell me. Give me a number. Give me a number. No, give me a number. How many examples you want before you're satisfied? How many you want? How many would before you're satisfied?
Okay, okay. I think you can resolve that question
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
General
yeah.
Secretary to.
Tell me.
The-
Mr. Lorraine,
Yeah.
I just want to ask, President Buhari just said on Sunday, he said that there is evidence that there has been discrimination against African Guyanese under the past administration, the PPP administration.
Yes.
Are you saying what the President is saying may not be accurate?
I can say that, yes, but I hope that you will ask him the same way, like how I gave this example. So ask him about it, about the evidence that he has had. Because we know if you argue about discrimination, it was argued that we were discriminating against Indo-Guyanese because the PPP, because the defense, I forgot the name, the commission that we had established to look at the disciplined forces, recommended that we have a more balancing of the security forces to get more Indo-Guyanese jobs in the security forces. We were accused of never implementing that report, that we discriminated against Indo-Guyanese because a bipartisan committee had recommended this. And so we were accused of discriminating against Indo-Guyanese.
But Mr. Jagdeo, why
So
was there any report, that your government was discriminating against Africans?
they,
Was there ever report to that?
we invited in. The government of Guyana invited here the rapporteur, the UN rapporteur on racism. The UN rapporteur on racism. Here's a Senegalese. He came and he said, a conclusion was basically that I do not find this deep-seated. That was his conclusion. No, this was a second woman who came, that report was chaperoning around the park. Report Rupnarain was chaperoning around the park, who did not even meet with the Ethnic Relations Commission, although they asked to meet with her. That was another person. But this guy is from Senegal. He was the UN rapporteur on racism. I can get you the report. But listen, I am prepared to talk about the access to land. How many Indo-Afro-Guyanese had a plot of land in 1992? And when we left in 2015, how many had a plot of land? I'm prepared to talk about that. I'm prepared to talk about the security forces, public service employment. How many were working in the public service in that period, and how many continue to work in the period when we left office? I'm prepared to talk about asset ownership. How many Afro-Guyanese owned a car in 1992, and how many owned a car in 2015? How many own homes, etc.? How many businesses were there in 1992, and how many were there in 2015? I'm prepared to talk about fact-based issues. I'm prepared to talk about public expenditure. How much money we spent by region, per capita spending by region. You will see the most money spent from the Treasury on a per capita basis, if you add the subsidy, is region 10, per capita basis. That's where you talk about government policy. That is where, not just a couple of fringe elements complaining without any basis. And so I'm proud of our record. I'm proud of our record, how we have moved this country forward. And a lot of our people, in fact, all of our people, made progress.
Yes, sir. You've been very patient.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Jaro, my question is, you just spoke about being in contact with former NISL boss, Mr. Brassington. Considering the fact that there are a number of unresolved issues with his tenure, like, for instance, NISL waiving, collecting millions of dollars from someone who has been described as your best friend. So,
Who is this person?
new GPC. Have you sought answers from him, or why is he
Yeah.
giving a comment for
Yeah, sure.
tenure?
But have you had the courtesy of getting from the government the response of NISL to the 70-odd pages report, the political report that Gulsaran did? Have you seen it?
Well,
No, has Kaishore News received a copy? Because I'm arguing that you should receive a copy. Have you gotten it or not?
I'm talking about issues related.
No. This is in the audit. These are all audits. The audit came up with several allegations. Brassington, in a 200 pages response, NISL responded to every allegation made by Gulsaran and rubbished 98% of them, made his work look unprofessional. I have been asking the government to release to the media not just the Gulsaran's report, which obviously you have, but all the responses to the audit. Jagdeo does not need to respond because the entities themselves have responded to all of this, including Brassington. But if you could call Winston Jordan, because obviously you don't have it, and I'm arguing I'm in favor of the media having the responses, then you will see on every single one of the issues that you have reported on, from Gulsaran's perspective, that there has been a response from NISL rubbishing rubbishing it totally as unprofessional work done. And all I'm asking is that the government will give you that response. Okay?
All right. Any more questions? Yeah.
Sir, on this bill,
After.
Martin, you spoke about outstanding bills close to another $500 million. I was hoping you could provide some more clarity on this, elaborate a bit.
I I can't provide clarity. Clarity is what we're seeking. But I know this is the most like clouded issue. It's pretty clear for us, for the country. And since maybe PPP, if PPP does not have the moral right, maybe the media would have the moral right to ask a couple of questions. One, maybe from NCN. How much money was collected from private donations? But how much money was collected from private donations? Who gave the money? Did it enter into the asset register of the state? Or how was the money expended? All the money from private sources. That you claim that of the 400 odd million, which they got in Parliament, that there were public tenders and selective tendering. Can you give us the details of when you initiated the process for selective tendering? When the public ones were advertised? Who won the contracts? Who were the other bidders? And then the third set of questions, are these all the liabilities, or are there other outstanding claims? If you get 3 sets of questions answered from this government, we'll be satisfied. But we're banging our heads. And you ask what option we have in the first question. If they don't go to the Committee of Privileges, very little other than exposing it. We can go to the courts probably, and we may have to do in some cases, but they're very little because the arrogance of the government, this is their time. So they'll spend and do whatever they want with the resources.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not on this alone. Anything, you can ask on anything, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll give you first, and then this gentleman.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm speaking at the GMA launch, so I want to focus more on the economy at that launch. Oh. Why couldn't the president order a commission of inquiry into or a forensic audit? Look how selective it has been. The City Hall has been there for 50 years under PNC's control. For 50 years under PNC's control. They're not interested in finding out about what happened there. You know, do the forensic audit there, too. But they will never do that. And this whole thing about, you know, it's our business, it's not our business, etc., back and forth between the government and City Hall, they're complicit. The City Council is complicit. The central government is complicit in this arrangement to give this unconscionable contract out on meters. We're opposed to it totally.
Yes.
I have a couple questions on SOHU. Sorry. Has the government informed you of any oversight body to govern the expenditure of SARU? And that's one. Secondly, with regards to search and seizures, how are these operations effective?
Yeah.
Is it of a witch hunting nature? Is it government driven?
Yeah.
Opposition driven?
We have made it clear that SARU, the mere composition of SARU, makes it a body that is focused purely on coming after the PPP. They have no intention of going after or recovering state assets. In fact, they do not need new legislation. There is adequate legislation to go after anyone who has stolen any asset from the state. So this body, the SARU, is in the office of the president, takes directions from the office of the president, and they are going only after political opponents. SOCU was established by the PPP under the authority of the commissioner, and its job was to assist the financial intelligence unit to go after serious crime like money laundering, etc. It has now been converted into a body that witch hunts opposition people. So they can't say how they have come up now with a list of about 9 persons, with 6 or 7 of our members of parliament on it, and that list, going after them. I can understand if you take MP X and you start investigating him or her, and then the trail leads to assets and bank account. But you can't start off with a list to say, here are 7 members of parliament, and we're now going to go on a fishing expedition against them. Because you have to then answer who generated this list. Until now, they're not answering who generated the list. And we believe the list was not generated in the police force, it was in the office of the president. So this body takes direction from the political authorities. We, we are arguing that we've asked for the protocol, and until now, they have been for months and months delaying the issuance of the protocols. So we are hoping now, Ramjatan promised, by this weekend. So let's see if we'll get the protocol by this weekend that will clearly delineate reporting relations, oversight, spending, etc. People are given a top-up at SOCU from the office of the president. So I guess if you go after PPP man with enough zeal, you get $100,000 more.
Yes. Go ahead.
What is your response to the new GRA boss who spoke of a massive shortfall in tax revenue going to concessions given by the people?
Yes. The new GRA boss, I don't know if you recall, the party issued a statement maybe 2 or 3 months before. They said they had initiated a public search for a new Commissioner General. And we identified the current person as the person who was going to be selected after the public process would have been completed. So that's one, the first point. The second point is that would this commissioner say to the people who receive these concessions? Because we heard Winston Jordan, you recall in his budget, spoke about 55 billion of remission given to friends and family of PPP people. That is the first budget he had. The president repeated that. I explained here at a press conference how the remission system works. That, for example, the heavy-duty equipment, which is across the board for all Guyana. So if you imported a tractor, a combine, an excavator for mining, a skidder for the forestry sector, all heavy equipment, you then got the 16% VAT remitted. It was not designed to give Kaicho News reporter or a PPP supporter. It was across the board. Any person who imported any equipment of that nature would get the 16% waived. The government now removed that waiver. So that is the concession they're talking about. But they're not looking at how the concession impacted the productive sector. And this is where the economy will grind to a halt. I want to deal with the philosophy of this a bit more at the GMA thing, about their whole philosophy in approaching the economy, which I don't have the time to do now. But That is the kind of remission that we give. Yes, they've removed the remission and they'll collect a bit more, but trust me, it's going to affect the productive sector. Now, the manufacturers similarly have remissions, right? They'll get the VAT waived for some of their raw material. So if you're a registered manufacturer, you would get the VAT waived. So I suspect that is the remission he's talking about. Let them remove it. They're going to remove it, and you know what they'll do? They'll destroy the manufacturing sector. It had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the shortfall. We have had VAT collections grow year after year with all those remissions in place. You know why? The economy was doing well. And economic activities were booming. And there was more circulation of money. And so that is why, in spite of all of these remissions, which are necessary for the productive sector, their VAT collections went up. They are doing the opposite. They're choking off the economy now, and it's going to get worse.
And what about waivers granted to large-scale companies?
Yeah, but that's precisely. So Jordan came to the budget, to the parliament, which night it was? 2 nights ago at parliament. And he said, we passed an amendment to give waivers to the oil company. So we're going to give, look at the bill that he brought to parliament to give a whole series of waivers to the oil company, tax waivers and stuff. How is that, how is the government reconciling that? That's large-scale companies. 2 nights ago he did that, but they don't see the irony in it, that it's okay if they do it, because it's a cost of doing business. But when the PPP did it, it had to be corrupt.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, final questions. Persons have reported to the gang